Okay, we're going to be learning the laws now of Kitzur on Shabbos. From chapter 87 is dealing with the laws, really, of how one is allowed to deal with pets and animals on Shabbos, which is not as simple as one may think. And let's bring up the text. Yeah, Aaron, hold on, I'm just about to start. Okay. Yes, Barbara's not coming tonight. So we're going to be learning the laws of, interesting, these are the laws of animals on Shabbos, dealing with how do we feed and how we deal with our pets on Shabbos, chapter 87. Okay, so first the Kitzur quotes the verse in the Chumash. It says like this. Ksiv, the verse says, Laman Yenuach, that on Shabbos, the word Yenuach is from the word Menucha, that they must rest, Sharcha v'chamerecha, your ox and your donkey, v'goymer, etc. Hariki, he's hira haTorah. The Torah has commanded. Shagam ha-behema she'Yisrael tenuach. On Shabbos, it's not just that you have to rest, but our animals have to rest. V'loi behemel bavad, not just the domestic animals. The kol baalei chayim, any live, what we'd call from the greater, not just the cattle, but any of the animals. If you have other pets, dogs, cats, all have to that are under our responsibility have to rest on Shabbos. Hey, Rebecca, dealing with the laws of how do we care for our pets and animals if you have a farm on Shabbos. Therefore, because so says the Torah, this is the laws of Shabbos. Osir lahaniach levehemtoi shetoitzi eze masa. A animal is not allowed to carry on Shabbos, just like we're not allowed to carry on Shabbos. An animal can't carry out a load on Shabbos. Shafilu yotze me'eleha l'reshus harabim. You can say, what do you mean? Even if it's I'm not carrying, my animal's carrying it. Even if the cow, so to say, were to walk out on its own to a public domain, carrying something, v'hoitzia masa, and is carrying something, over who, the owner, obviously not the cow, aleha mitzvah you transgressed a positive commandment. I mean, there's no transgression. We have positive commandments and negative commandments. It's you transgress the positive commandment of your animals resting on Shabbos, because by allowing your cow to walk and carry, or any animal that belongs to carry on Shabbos in a public domain, you're not fulfilling the biblical commandment, the positive commandment of the Torah that your animals should rest. Now, what is included in this? Right? We know today a lot of animals have different things that they walk out with, leashes. Today, people their dogs have coats, protection. Some dogs today, if you were to walk the streets of Seattle and other places, have shoes, have mittens. So what can they and can they not go out with? Even if it's something that is for beauty, it's something that's making the animal look nicer. Mikol makam have a masa that's carrying it. It's not a necessity. But if there's something that is required for the animal's health, for instance, kamoi eged tachboishe shalamaka, a bandage on a wound, muteris latzis, but then surely the animal could go out with that. Now, this is where it gets, and I shouldn't say the word dicey, but where it gets complicated to know what this means. Something for its protection. What's defined as its protection? Then it's like just like a person could go out with clothing, which is for your protection, for the environment, so to the animal care. But if it's just for added protection, not really necessary, we're just being a little bit aggressive in our protection for the animal, then it's prohibited. So also included in this, also, it depends on who's the animal that's wearing it. There are certain things that for this animal, it's not a protection, even if it would be a protection for another animal. But if it's not a protection for this animal, then it's no longer then this animal can outwear it and take it out in the public domain on Shabbos. Havila legabi behema zu, for this animal, it's a masa, it's something that's carrying v'asr and prohibited. This creates a lot of questions because we don't know. There's a lot of people today are, you could say a coat. Let's say the coat in the weather. We're going to learn that if certain things that keep an animal warm, for like donkeys that are cold. So one could argue if maybe, but that can they walk out with the mittens on their paws today that most dogs don't walk out with, and that's like something extra. That's definitely called an extra protection or a beauty thing. These fall under these questions. Okay, let's first learn the footnotes. He quotes the verses in Exodus, meaning in Shemos 23:12. Footnote number 2. So he says like this, because even if the animal went out on its own into public domain carrying the burden, you have violated a positive commandment of the Torah. Now he says like this, although the animal may be permitted to do a melacha work of its own violation, such as eating growing grass, that's what we're going to learn about, you must not allow it to do a melacha which is not of its own will. Now he's like this, to put an animal, and we're going to learn, to have an animal, we have to remember something. When it says that an animal has to rest, it's not just that the animal can't carry. Animal can't do any work. Just like you have to rest on Shabbos, you have to allow your animal to rest on Shabbos. The animal is not allowed to work on Shabbos. You rest, your animal rests. That's what the pasuk says. So what about grazing and eating grass? So that is not a malacha. We're going to learn that actually it's easier for the animal to eat grass that's still connected. So though you're going to benefit from it because it's so to say your natural mowing, it's mowing the grass, but that's what the animal it's doing for its own eating. It's not doing it for malacha as a work. But he says so that is allowed, but like eating grass because it's doing it on its own. You're not forcing it. But you're not allowed a malacha. You must not allow it to do a malacha which is not of its own will, such as carrying of a load. An animal doesn't put the load on itself, and therefore he quotes the Mishnah Brura that says that you have to be very careful. It can carry something on behalf of the person on Shabbos. Now again, it can't even do things within a private domain that are considered malacha, considered work. It's not just the public domain. Aaron, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, okay. One of our friends in college, totally blind, he got his eyes removed because of a disease. Now he's fine, but he uses a seeing eye dog 24 hours a day, except on Shabbat. He takes off all the gear and gives it a day off and uses a cane and then relies on some people to help him, depending on where he is. But if he knows the area, the cane's okay. But only on Shabbat. But let me just ask you, if it was for medical reasons that you have the dog, for whatever the medical reason is, can they work? I mean, some of them have to protect you in case you have a seizure and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Because listen, there's a person also who's a nurse or a doctor is for a medical emergency is there to help people. It's like just like I mean, yeah, you can't say the dog has to rest more than the person. So if if the dog has a responsibility as a medical care taker, so and also it's not whatever the dog is doing is not forbidden on Shabbos. For instance, the cow can't plow on Shabbos, just like you're not a plow on Shabbos. The cow can't plow on Shabbos. You can carry, the dog can't carry. The cow can't carry, whatever you want to say. But walking in the street to the dog is permitted, and you're wearing these leashes are for its protection, right? If the dog, we're going to learn soon that a dog that doesn't have a leash is it could get lost, and it's for its own benefit. It's not
But the
carrying.
leash is for your benefit because it helps you see when you don't have eyes.
Yeah, but it's also you would have a dog on a leash anyways. In America, at least in
Correct.
some places, you have to have a dog on a leash anyways. So and we're going to learn that the leashes, and if you scare the dogs and run away, the leashes, we learned about the leashes on the horse, but the same thing, those days maybe the dogs didn't have leashes, but today the dogs have leashes. It's for their own protection to have a leash.
So he could have allowed the dog to walk.
Yeah, but sure, to have a dog, a professional dog, especially for the blind, would be permitted if he would so
But
choose.
he ends up giving the day off.
Once he wants to give his dog a day off, that's his choice.
But you could, okay, because
Yeah.
I was confused. Now, my last question is, okay, so mowing the lawn with your dog, meaning or
Not the
with
dog.
any animal.
Your dog wouldn't doesn't eat
No, no,
grass.
no, no, no. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Eating
yeah.
the grass. They eat my mom's dog eats a lot of grass. But what if you don't have an roof in your area, and so they take out toy and then you let it go outside? You noticed or not? Is that allowed? Because it's going to take.
In theory, for a dog to carry a toy on Shabbos is not. You should prevent it. I mean, if it
Okay.
does it on its own, it's like a child doing it. You can't nothing you can do. But if you're about to go outside and you can't just give your dog a what do they call it, a tennis ball, unless there's an eruv.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So it says footnote number 3. This is the question. Similar, anything that the animal requires for safekeeping. So now we're going to address the questions that similar to what Aaron just asked. An identification collar may not be worn because it's only an indirect safeguard for the animal. So says the Aruch Shulchan. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach disagrees. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, which is one of the main halachic authorities of the past generation, he passed away maybe 20 years ago or so, disagrees, lived here in Yerushalayim, and permits it. So it means to have a leash is permitted, for it ultimately benefits the animal. Again, if the animal were to get lost, it's not in the best interest of the animal to not be with its owner. So again, that's why the leash is allowed as well. Okay, footnote number 4, but something which is for an excessive safeguard, see next paragraph, is forbidden. Concerning the wearing of objects to ward off an ayin hara, evil eye, if someone has something like that for a dog, or to prevent damaging others, such as a muzzle. So then see Shulchan Aruch 305, 1117, and below paragraph 7. Okay, so he's going to discuss there about a muzzle. It's also not so simple. A muzzle is for the benefit of other people, right? You don't want the dog to bite. Now, again, I have to check. I want to go for next class. I'll check other things that people today, because today people are doing all kind of extra things on the animals, like I said, mittens and all that. So that that seems to me to be excessive, but I'm not going to
What
possibly.
about air tags? People put them on their dogs so if they would run off, they could geolocate.
AirTag, that's a good question because it's also an electronic thing. But I would assume, I don't know, I would assume also, for instance, when we had a neighbor that had a husky dog, and whatever, I'm not even sure if it's allowed halachically in the weekday because of Tsar Ba'al Chayim. We learned that also is not allowed. You're not allowed to hurt your animal. So they had a shocker on the neck of the dog that would prevent it from barking. Because if it would bark, it would get a shock on its
Okay,
neck.
so my mom has one. It's electric. It's a invisible fence if they go beyond, but it never hurts. They say it's humane, according to the people who sell it, and it just like tickles them, but it's enough to annoy them that they don't want to leave
Oh,
their
that's interesting.
confines.
Like a laser or something?
No, it's like the shock that you were mentioning, for the barking, but it's for leaving. So instead of having a fence that you can actually see because you just want trees.
Yeah.
So you put these things under the ground, and if they go to this area, it gives a little warning on their
And,
neck.
and if a human goes there,
Nothing.
it's only felt by the animal.
You only feel it because you have a special collar.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The collar gets triggered.
Yeah.
Also the bark collar, I believe the shock is like very, very minimal. Like I don't think it hurts them.
Okay, again, I'm not going to paskin on that. You have to have a proper Rav that can investigate. I'm sure it's been investigated before.
Let me
'Cause
say this to you. You know the old time you used to wind this thing up, put it in your hand, and shake someone's hand, and it would shock them.
okay, yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of like that.
Uh-huh. Okay, I don't know. Again, I'm definitely not gonna give
But the point I'm making is it's electric. Doesn't matter if it's allowed or not
So,
because
so,
we
so,
can't
that,
pass
so,
them.
so that's no, so there's two questions. One question is if those things are allowed on Shabbos. Second question is if they're allowed during the week. Now, obviously the tag is allowed during the week. It's nothing. It's just a tracker. Now, I'm assuming again. I'm gonna assume that if it's, let's say, inserted in the collar, right, and it's kind of protected in the collar, So and mamish, it's necessity for the dog for its protection. Otherwise, it gets lost. Today we have a lot of situations, unfortunate situations. The animal gets lost, the pet gets lost, and doesn't end well for the pet. So I would assume, again, assuming that because there's no actual, you're not pressing anything, and it's not an
No, it's
electric.
always on.
Way. It's always on, and so that must probably be maybe possibly again. And I have to check. So we'll check on that. And we'll check on the
All right,
collar.
check out one other thing while you're at it. There's
Mhm.
a thing you can take a needle. The doctors do the animal doctors do it. They put a little thing under the skin so that you can track it as well. If you didn't want to use
Yeah,
the
that I'm assuming would be even more permitted because it's mamish on the goof. But let's see. Okay, now he's going to get really into the questions that we're talking about now. He's really going to get into the next section is about horses. Those days again, those days you have to remember in the times of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, I don't believe dogs were leashed. Maybe they were leashed. Maybe the wild dogs had chains around their neck, not to hurt people. The watchdogs, but person walking in the street. It's probably those days, at least maybe in the shtetl, in Eastern Europe, maybe it was less common to have a leash on the dog, maybe in more the metropolitans in Paris and stuff like that. But what we definitely had was different kind of horses had their leashes. Now, evidently, I'm not an expert of horses, and I'm trying to figure out the difference. But there's a difference between a halter and a bridle for a horse. And in my checking of the pictures, they don't seem to be that different. They seems to, because he brings down in halacha now about that. It seems I'm seeing it looks like from over here that the bridle is one, the halter is just kind of on the face, and the bridle more has the front part over here on top. This is more secure. It seems
no,
like
the one goes in the mouth, so when you steer it, and
I
one
see.
it doesn't go in the mouth.
Just like a rat, like a leash.
It's the leash without the thing in the mouth. You see the picture
Okay.
with the brown guy, and you see that little thing sticking out of his mouth, like the
But
second
I
row,
see.
third one,
This one over here.
which I can't. If you
Over here,
no,
over
they're
here,
below
over
it.
here.
Yeah, but also below it. You see it close up.
Yeah, yeah.
No, not that one.
This
Yes.
one over here. Okay, I see what you're saying. So there's that's the bridle.
That goes inside the mouth. So when you pull on it, he knows to stop. And when you turn it right and left, he
Okay.
knows to turn. But the other one doesn't have that thing inside the mouth. And then you could just when you're with a kid and he goes on those donkeys at pouring time or whatever, and then they're dragging them around. So they wouldn't have the bridle.
Okay, I see. And also, I noticed also there's a difference that it doesn't have one over the forehead. The
No, the
bridle.
one over the forehead is because they get sidetracked. So if they see leaves they want to eat and you're trying to move ahead, they get plenty of food during the day. So you don't want them to get sidetracked. So you want them to keep going straight. If they see something, they can also be scared by another animal, a bird.
Uh-huh.
So you don't want, so those are to protect the eyes to keep looking straight.
Yeah, so here he calls it this one. Okay, here you have
Oh,
the
that thing? I don't know. That's just
yeah.
to hold it on.
I thought that was one of the differences. Okay.
No, but the one there is one that goes, you could see two little flaps and it makes him not look at the
No,
side.
that I see. That's when it doesn't want it to look that's on the side of its eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So he says like this. Asus yoytze ba'afsari b'resen. You can walk out with either its halter or its bridle. Avalei b'shneim. You can't have both, because then it's overdressed. Umuter lichroich hevel ha'afsar saviv tzavari v'yetze boy. Again, so you can't have too loose the leash, so to say, the rope around the bridle around the halter can't be too loose. So he says you may wrap the halter straps around the neck and go out with it, provided that it's wrapped loosely. It's not too tight around the neck. So then you could today because then it has a purpose. So you put your hand in and easily, if you want to grab it to control the horse, between the thigh and the neck, to pull it if the horse is going to try to run away. So then again, everything has to have a purpose. To have extra, if the horse is carrying too much, then it's extra and it's not necessary. Okay. Now you also are allowed to, in the private domain, carry the halter and put it on the horse on Shabbos. However, you're not allowed to lean on the horse which is possible that would happen because of this the size. While you put it on it, mishum the asr lismech b'Shabbos al achai. You are not allowed to lean on an animal on Shabbos. Okay, so we'll see the footnotes that gives more detail. Aval achamor, but a donkey, lo yetzi beresin shel barzo, cannot walk out with an iron bridle. When it comes to chamor, a donkey, that's just added protection. Now, shor v'para, what about a cow and an ox? That you don't generally have to watch them. Right? We know that even in Eretz Yisrael in the north, anyone who goes to the Golan Heights or parts of the Galil, the horse, the donkey, the cows are just walking around. We don't have the same protection like we do for the horse that would run away. Assume latzis bechevel savisavarmi. Not allowed to put any leash around the cow because it's not necessary. Elim regilin livroich, unless this specific cow is misbehaves and is always running away. So therefore, it always has a leash. So you're allowed to have the leash on it on Shabbos. Im kosher chavel befi asus harizem masa. Now, if you're just to, he says, it seems like what I understand from here is if you're just to tie a rope around the mouth of the horse, to schlep it, to carry it, that's just a waste. Why? Because if it doesn't work. Why not? If he knows how to get out of it, easy, and he's just going to get out of the rope and run away. So you're just going to end up holding a rope. It's not like a proper halter, which has proper straps. Which is around the head, not just around the mouth. Okay, so if you can try to walk with something basically just tying a rope around the mouth of the horse, that's useless, and therefore it's not necessary, and therefore it's not allowed on Shabbos. Okay, let's see the footnotes over here. 6 is like this. You're not allowed to wear both. Why? You can't have both a bridle and a halter. So he says why? Since one is sufficient. So says the Mordechai. Number 7 is. Okay, you could tie the strap around its neck, provided that it's loosely, so your hand could get in between. If it was too tight, you couldn't get your hand in if you needed to run away. It says this is based on the ruling of Tosfos, Rabbeinu Yeruchim, and the Bach, which we learned about. However, Rashi and Ran disagree and allow even tight-wrapped if that is the ordinary mode for wearing these straps. Again, if that's the way they wear them, then you could do them properly. It seems like we're not actually talking, it says straps here. And here it's in top, it says the halter straps. And here it says the chevel. Okay, severed savaroi. I thought it meant maybe around the extra part of the rope. It seems over here it could even be the straps that we saw in the picture have to be loose according to the Tosfos. Okay, footnote number 8 is you could handle the halter, but you're not allowed to. It's forbidden to lean on any animal on Shabbos. See Rashi Masechtas Beitza 19a and Shulchan Aruch 305 about the prohibition of leaning on animal on Shabbos. Footnote number 9, is it in this halacha? Hold on. No, it's the next halacha. Okay.
What's the difference between leaning and hugging? Like sometimes you hug your pets, like especially a horse. You pet it, you hug it.
We have to see more than what he's quoting over there from Sechta. It seems, but the word over here is lismoich. The word saimach means like you're supporting yourself on the animal, leaning on the animal. Hugging is different than leaning. Doesn't say you can't touch them. Obviously, you're touching the horse when you're putting doesn't say you can't pet the horse or touch the horse. It says you can't lean on the horse. Or surely you can't ride on the horse in Shabbos. So that would be if you're finding support on the animal, because then what happens is the animal is working for you. It's part of the prohibition of work. When you're hugging, it means if you're supporting yourself on the animal, then the animal is becoming like a workhorse for you. You're getting support. All right. Let's see further. Sus v'chein shar behemes lo yotzu b'mardas. Okay, now we're again. You have to remember what was the Gemara? The Gemara says Rebbe Lezer ben Azariah. The Gemara on Shabbos, one of the longest tractates of Talmud is the Gemara of Shabbos that deals with the laws of Shabbos. Is about 157 pages. That deals with all these laws. It's a whole chapter dedicated to animals, and there was a story there, a law that's brought down that Rebbe Lezer ben Azariah disagreed about ribbons. Some people like to dress up their animals. Their cow went out with a ribbon or so. If you're allowed to wear those things on Shabbos. So here he says, again, this is like a question, like people have all kind of stuff on their dogs. for decorations. And it's what it says is the animal, unlike a person, we don't tell a person you have to wear, only your rain boots or your coat. You could wear nice clothing on Shabbos, right? People have special, beautiful Shabbos clothing. But it seems that with the animals, they can only wear things that are necessity to walk out with. Otherwise, it's considered carrying. Basically, maybe the halacha doesn't subscribe to the idea that the cow is on board with the ribbon. For the cow, it's a stress. You like it, but who says the cow likes it? But either way, so here, what about a mardas? A mardas is a saddle, a pack saddle. A pack saddle, if I'm not mistaken, is one of these guys, which is more than just a regular saddle. Okay, on the donkey, I think it's actually like something like this that has a lot of you're carrying stuff on it. Okay, so he says like this. A horse and other animals shouldn't be wearing a pack saddle. The donkey is allowed because it also keeps the donkey warm. So here we see the basis that if we assume that the dog is cold, so to keep an animal warm is allowed. Only a donkey, it says, we know the famous thing that a donkey, right? The Gemara says that a donkey is even cold in the months of Tammuz. Even in the summer, the donkey's cold. So surely the donkey's cold in the winter time. So because it's for protection for the donkey to stay warm, so therefore could wear the saddle pack.
Wait, this doesn't make sense because in the nature they don't have any of this, and they stay plenty warm and healthy.
This isn't the halacha about it. It's a famous.
I understand, but you're saying don't wear things that aren't necessary. And if they could live in the wild without it, so why is it necessary?
First of all, the donkey's not a wild animal; it's a domestic animal.
It never was wild?
Today we have domestic donkeys. You have wild donkeys. That's something else. You have in the north in Israel, but you have in the south of by Ein Gedi they have those special donkeys that are unique to Ein Gedi. But a donkey is a domestic. Is considered the difference between a behema and a chaya. Behema is a domestic animal. Cows are domestic animals. Horses are domestic. I mean, again, you're right. There are wild horses, right? And everyone knows the wild horses of America. I don't think they started off as wild horses, but either way, you have the what do they call it? What's the American horse called? The wild one in Texas and
no clue, but I think they did start wild.
Yeah. So the musket, whatever. So you have, but the donkey seemingly is a domestic animal. But maybe when it's domesticated, it becomes colder. I don't know. So v'im kashla mardas me'erev Shabbos, mutar she'yotzer b'Shabbos. Now, if you could wear a saddle, let's say in its private domain, that so it shouldn't stay. So then it's not counting, so because it keeps warm. And if you've tied it on before Shabbos, so then you could go out even on Shabbos to a public domain. Mutar she'yotzer b'Shabbos. Shemal bushahi, because it's like the clothing of the donkey. But if it hasn't been tied, then you shouldn't go out with it on Shabbos, because then although we could wear it for being warm, but you shouldn't go out in public, because then it may fall off because it's not tied. Then you end up carrying it, and then we have a problem. Or with Shabbos, and you can't tie. Why can't you just tie it on Shabbos? So he says on Shabbos you're not allowed to tie the mardas, the saddle pack on Shabbos, because the way you put it on, it takes a lot of effort, and including in that effort is to lean on it, and leaning on it is prohibited on Shabbos, so therefore you can't tie it. You could place it on it, but if you place it on it, it can't go out in a public domain because then it may fall off. So then when can it go out? If it was put on before Shabbos. But if it stays in its yard, you could put it on so it should remain warm, so it shouldn't be protected from the cold. Again, he repeats that you shouldn't go out if you just put it on because it's not tied. Avul sus. What about a horse? Can you put a saddle pack on a horse? La yitim mardas a klal. You're not allowed to place it on the horse at all. Imloi kishakar godol shemazikam lusus, unless it's really cold outside, and then the horse also needs to be protected. So today we have those also. Today, horses have those huge coats. Again, the Shulchan Aruch accepts that a horse is not as cold as a donkey, doesn't get as cold as a donkey. And traditionally, in regular weather, the horse is okay to be out in its natural state. But if it's very cold for the horse, then also the horse you could put it on, because then, of course, the horse could wear what it needs if it's cold. And also, if we're talking about the summer months, when they need the coats for protection from the bugs, so then, and because the bugs annoy it, so then also you're allowed to put it on Shabbos. Then you can put on the saddle pack that protects it from the bugs. You have to be careful that when you place it on the animal, you can't lean on it because you're not allowed to lean on an animal on Shabbos. What about if you want to take off the saddle pack on Shabbos? So he says one is not allowed to, because it's okay for the horse or the donkey to remain with it until after Shabbos, because it's not tzar ba'al chaim, it's not pained to have the saddle on it. So therefore, it's not necessary for you to take it off, and therefore untying it and leaning on it would the chances of leaning on it are prevent you from taking it off on Shabbos. And it's not a necessary work. Again, you could put on it if it's cold, provided, he says, this is permitted provided you do not tie it. We're talking about the donkey. Okay. 10. You may not perform. You may not perform a bothersome activity which is unnecessary. So this is something that's difficult to put on a saddle or to take off a saddle, and to do it on Shabbos is not necessary. Therefore, you're not allowed to do it. Okay. What about bells? Some cats have like little bells, or animals have bells on their necks. So it says, "Asr latze spezuk." An animal may not wear a bell on Shabbos. Even if you've made it so that it will not ring, it's been plugged. And even if, hold on, Rebecca, even if there's an Erev, rak b'chatzer muter shi'aleh, only in the yard. And if it's not plugged, and then it makes sound, then it's not allowed even on Shabbos, even in the private domain, even in this courtyard. Yes, Rebecca.
So, like, a lot of dogs wear like a name tag, like plus a bunch of other things, and it's not a bell, but like when they walk, it makes like a jingling noise. So, are you saying that that's not allowed on Shabbos?
It seems like not. I mean, it's about it says like this. If we look at footnote number 11, the bell makes it appear as if the animal is being taken to the market. The idea of the bell was, I guess, that the problem with the bell is that we're going to see. Now we're being introduced to a new problem with the animals.
But it's not a bell though. It's just like it says their name in
Jingle.
case
It's
they
just
run away.
it's just a
In case,
jingle.
right, and in case they run away, this way, like people know who they belong to, so they could be returned to their owner.
But that's the name tag. Oh, if it's a name tag that is not designed to make noise, it just happens to make noise, that's something different. People's shoes make noise. But if it's the reason it seems like they had a bell was when someone would go to the market to sell their cow, so to draw attention, save time,
Right.
they would start walking the animal to the market, and they'd jingle, and people could pay attention, and then they could save the effort of going to the market. Someone could run over and say, "Oh, you're selling this cow. How much does that?" So it was part of the process of selling the cow. So that's different. Metal plate. Okay. So Danny's saying about a metal plate as the name tag, that's different. If it's there, just it happens to be a metal plate and it happens to make a sound, that's different than a bell that's placed there for the purpose of identification of sale. Therefore, he says first of all, to carry it outside is not necessary, and even inside, the bell is something that's prohibited on Shabbos. We're going to learn that things that are connected that may lead people to believe that you're in the process of selling the animal, that's not allowed on Shabbos, because it's something not Shabbostic. It's something you do in the week. It's a weekday kind of activity. It's part of kind of the labor and kind of could bring attention. And of course, you don't want to be involved in business on Shabbos. Okay, let's go for footnote number 12 is Okay, so why can it have, so the bell going outside is, it's like this. Even in the city where there's an Erev has been established, it's forbidden to let it go out with the bell. Why? Because the bell makes it appear as if the animal is being sold in the market. Okay. That's with the jingle, without the jingle. Now, what about having the bell that's not plugged in the private domain? You're not going out to the market. Still says you may not cause musical sounds to be made on Shabbos. So the Magen Avram says that even in your private domain, in the yard, you can't have a bell that's making noise because it's making sounds on Shabbos. Again, the making sounds on Shabbos is a proper bell. A metal plate, I don't think would be included in that. I don't think so. Okay, let's go a little further. Now the question is how much of the rope, we have halachically many times in the laws of different things, whether it's the laws of impurity or the laws of Shabbos or other laws, or the laws of sale, how much excess is allowed to be on something. So here he's saying is like this, that you are allowed to walk with a horse holding onto, you may lead the horse with the straps of the bridle, provided you may hold the end of the straps so that a tefach does not protrude from your hand. Meaning to say, okay, that if you have more than a tefach is like an arm's length, out of your hand, and that's excess, you don't need it. So you'd have to wrap it around the neck and only have, so the Gemara says 2 tefachim. And here we're more strict and we say 1 tefach. That means about 3 inches could be the max. That could be extra from your hand. Now, back to Aaron's question about a leash on the dog. So yeah, if you have a leash, I don't believe you're allowed to walk out with those, you remember they call those plastic ones that have like a spring that you're really holding a big piece. And, the dog is, you could pull it in and, those more fancy leashes, that I'm quite certain is forbidden on Shabbos. A leash, as long as it's tied, it's not too long, and you don't have that extra part hanging out, it seems like would be allowed. Like, I want to check on that though, about it in general, a dog walking out with a leash, because if it's necessary or not. Let's see footnote number 13. Could be a dog can't be leashed on Shabbos, just a regular dog at all, unless it's for Tzabal Chaim, it has to go out for the restroom, etc. Let's see footnote number 13. The Talmud Masechet Shabbos 54 prohibits holding the strap only if 2 tefachim protrude, because then it's not considered as part of the halter, it's just extra. However, we have accepted a more stringent prohibition and do not allow the strap to protrude even 1 tefach. Again, a tefach is 3 inches, to about 3 inches. 2 tefachim would be about 6 inches. So to have 6 inches of extra space is what the Talmud says. We're more stringent to say no more than 3 inches. Again, this is because the horse needs the rope, otherwise it runs away. And I would assume the same thing applies to the dog. And I'm sure this is a question because it happens all the time. To walk out with the leash is okay, as long as you don't have the extra. But I'm quite certain that those fancy leashes, the heavy plastic or whatever is metal that has that whole, wind system, that you're carrying, not the horse. You're carrying, not the dog, you're carrying extra weight. All right, 14. Sorry, let's continue. You have to make sure that the rope that's between you and the animal is not like extra, just hanging, that it's even within 3 inches of the ground. If it's very long, then just tie it around the neck, so that it means you only have the amount of rope that's necessary. Just to have a lot, it means a person can say, okay, I'm not allowed to have out of my hand more than 3 inches, then I'll just hold at the end and it's me dragging on the floor. That's not either allowed. So it has to be that the actual rope doesn't get within 3 inches of the ground, and at the same time doesn't have more than 3 inches outside of your hand. Okay, so footnote number 14 says, again, because to have the leash is necessary, but excess of the leash is not necessary. Since it serves no purpose for the animal, it is considered that the animal is carrying a burden. So this is about the animal. The animal, because at the end of the day, is the leash is on the animal. That's why I'm saying these pieces that you hold that have like a wind, that's you're holding, and you're not allowed to do that in Shabbos. Okay. Shtei behemes a yoiser, shein kshur zu b'zu. What about 2 animals that are tied together? Means you have like one animal's tied to the next animal is like a caravan the way the Arabs, if you go to the Bedouins, walk with camels, right? So you have all the camels attached to each other, and the lead camel is the one you're holding its leash, right? So the animals are tied together. Vuhu, the owner, the person, and you're only holding one leash, and then the rest of the animals are leashed together and they follow each other. You're not allowed to do this on Shabbos, even a city that has an Erev, and I'm seeing the reason is because it appears that the animals are taken to the market. And again, the impression that you're taking the animals to the market is not allowed. Now, anyone who's been to the Jordanian desert or the other parts where the Bedouins are leading the camels, it's not just for sale, that's the way how they lead them. But it seems like it says that in domestic animals, then it seems like you're taking a caravan of animals for sale.
But what if there's no market in your area, like New York, Brooklyn? There's no market to sell those animals.
No, because for instance, let's say, are you allowed to be a dog walker on Shabbos, right? So you have people who have a job for being a dog walker. Could you, or let's say you own a whole bunch of dogs, and I don't know how they do it. I also assume they have like a general leash that's connected to a single leash, right? That
I don't know. I don't
so,
walk dogs. I
so I'm
think
saying
sometimes you might be right, and sometimes they have individual ones.
it's a good question about what do you do in a place where there's no market, but I think that's the halacha the way it was, and that's the way it remains. But he says, you could carry a whole bunch of leashes in one hand. So in the case where you're carrying a whole bunch of leashes, that's okay, because that's not as I said before, that as long as it's not too long, it's not leaving your hand, it doesn't drag on the floor. But to have it like in a whole system where there's all the animals attached together, it may give off the impression that you're selling them. Again, what would be today? Okay, Aaron's asking a good question. What would be today if you're a dog walker or you have a lot of dogs and they have that kind of single system, and it's obvious you're not going to the market because that's what would that fall under the same concern because the rabbis made that concern once upon a time and we remain. There's such a thing as a gezerah that remains even if it's not applicable to today. We learned that in the Gemara Megillah that once you have a gezerah, once you have something that the rabbis are concerned, you can't just get rid of it because it may not be as applicable today. So that's one of the rules. But I have to check. I want to check on a few things with animals. I'm not an animal owner myself, so I'm less familiar with the laws about certain things that people have on the animals as far as clothing goes, as far as the leashes go, and as far as the tags go. And we want to check on the electric things that they have around the neck. I'm quite certain that for sure is not allowed on Shabbos. Even in the private, and I'm assuming, and I'm not sure it's allowed during the week either. All right, let's see further. A chicken is not a hen is not allowed to wear the strings that are tied for identification purposes. Where they put something on their feet that prevents them from breaking things, like glasses or so. But to tie their feet so they shouldn't fly, that you're allowed. So there's no necessary for the Torah doesn't find it necessary for it to have identification. That's not necessary for the chickens. And if you're having and for it not to break the kelim also is not necessary.
But let me ask you this. I know in a farm, you put them on, they're not so easy to take off. And you would have to go through an entire flock of them. What are you going to do? You just leave them on.
You're saying if they were on before Shabbos?
Yeah.
That's a good question. But I guess maybe you shouldn't have them on the week if you're having them on Shabbos.
No, but you have to, because then how do you know which hens are which, or which are yours and which are your neighbors? You have a farm.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I have to check.
You have hundreds of them.
That's a good question. I have to look into that. That's a good question. But here we're going into the next questions of Sar Baal Chaim. You could I don't know how it popped up in my YouTube, a horrible video of some person, a Bedouin, torturing, having the legs tied of a camel, and it seemed to me very, very wrong. So over here it says that to tie the front legs of the horse, I guess obviously not tight together, in a way that it shouldn't be able to run away, that's allowed. You can't do you can't do what he calls over here, provided that they don't, provided that they don't, that you do not fetter or hog tie them. What does fettering mean? Akud means fettering. Akud, hainu shikoishu yadim regel. You can't tie the front foot with the back foot. That's not allowed. Virogel, what's rogel mean? You tie up one leg. So an animal needs 4 legs. You tie one leg, so it's only on 3 legs, so it can't run away. And here he says, you know, I'll do that on Shabbos. You tie one of its feet up. It only now has access to 3 of its legs. You're not allowed to do these things, and even during the week. It's pain to the animal. So the Torah prohibits to do anything that's hurtful to the animal. And this is hurtful to the animal. So to try to protect your investment, your ownership, that it shouldn't run away in a way that you hog tie it or you tie front leg to back leg, that is prohibited on Shabbos. And
So you're saying that on a rodeo, which is an American sport, one of the things that people practice and do is they ride a horse, they jump off, they grab the baby cow, and they hog tie it. And they see who can do it the fastest.
Maybe they hog tie it just for a second.
For a second or 2 seconds, but they're tying the front legs and the back legs.
It could be not allowed.
So a Jew couldn't join that sport.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of sports that people do, bullfighting and all this stuff. I don't know if that's not halachically allowed.
Could you watch it though?
You shouldn't. One of the things that they would do to the Jews in Spain was to see if they go to the bullfights, because they knew Jews didn't do those things. So when they wanted to see if the Marranos, the Jews that were pretending to have converted to Christianity, one of the things they checked to see if they went to the bullfights. Yes, Rebecca.
What about like going to an aquarium? Because supposedly like dolphins and certain animals are treated really, really badly in aquariums.
That's a long discussion about zoos and aquariums. What happens is it kind of goes chicken and egg thing, because once those animals have been domesticated, they wouldn't survive in the wild. Like if you were to take animals that are penguins or other animals that once they've gotten everyone have their kids have watched the Madagascar, where they can't survive in the wild. So once you've been domesticated, it may not be the way it should be, that the lions should be kept in cages, but would those lions today, if you let them loose, survive in the wild? So what comes first, the chicken and the hen? Should we initially set up zoos? I mean, we find the concept of zoos and we find animals, but definitely the questions that they have today about the orcas and the killer whales that are being kept in these small pools. It definitely questions the question of Tsar Balachayim. These are animals that are meant to swim great lengths and to put in small places, especially mistreated. I mean, they're finding animals. They found in the beginning animals in Aza that were mamish being mistreated. That's 100% not allowed. 100%.
That's the whole purpose of the vegan movement.
Okay, but the vegan movement's taking it further about eating animals, and
that's only number 2, but number 1 is how they treat them.
Okay, true, 100%. I will not do kaparis myself personally. I will not
either.
Do kaparis. No, I do kaparis. I will not do kaparis if I go to a place and then mistreat the chickens. Where I go to kaparis actually and funny, the most religious areas in Yerushalayim is the places where they keep the animals in the best condition.
But how do they not mistreat the chicken? They hold it by its legs and swing it over their head.
No, that's not the mistreating. The mistreating is when they're kept in these tiny cages and they can barely walk. When I go to the place I walk to, where I go to in Meir Sharim, the chickens are just running around over there. They have little chickens, they have little fenced-in areas, and they're running around, and you pick your chicken. But the other places you go to, the chicken are being kept in these tiny compartments.
Oh, that's all over Brooklyn.
That's not.
But you don't think it's Star Balachayim to pick up the chicken by its feet and swing it around?
First of all, you don't have to swing it around like it's chicken. Who asked you to do that? You could hold it. If anyone watched the Rebbe doing kaparis, the Rebbe was very respectful to the animal. The Rebbe held it in a way that was very respectful. No, you don't have to swing it around like a cat. I was in someone's area where the kid was swinging his rabbit around, and by the end of Shabbos, the rabbit was dead.
I have two Oh, sorry.
I just give money. I don't do
Yeah, I
proportion.
do that
That's
too.
that's your option.
I have two other questions, but should I
Sure.
wait till you're finished?
Yeah, let me just finish the footnote over
Okay.
here, 17. So he says that causes pain to animal. Where on Shabbos there is an additional prohibition for the animal carrying a burden. Here there's the problem of hog tying or the other one is fettering is a question of tzar balchaim that's prohibited, that's causing pain to the animal. Yes, Rebecca.
So first of all, I was not paying such close attention in the beginning, unfortunately. Did you talk about like if you're allowed to feed an animal, like a cat or a
No,
dog
no,
on Shabbos?
we didn't get to the feed yet. Feeding,
And
obviously,
then
the feeding is allowed under certain conditions, certain
okay, and
ways
then what about
than others.
did you talk about walking a dog outside the home, outside like
Okay,
outside a person's house on Shabbos?
okay. I mean, the dogs that go on walks are need to go on a walk. So a dog needs to get out. So if that's the case, then again, provided that it's done with the leashes and all in a permissible way.
So it is allowed if there's an
If,
Eruv.
if there's if Erev for sure, but even if there's no Erev, I'm not so sure if it's prohibited to have the dog go out. Let me check. I want to check on that at dog because we clearly have about the horse is allowed to walk out with a bridle and a halter on Shabbos, and you're holding the rope, and that's in a public domain.
Okay. I don't know why. For some reason, I thought that there was a halachic issue with feeding a dog and
No,
also
no, no, no.
walking a dog.
You can't starve your animals. You can't feed a dog on Shabbos that is not your pet. Now that there's a question. There's the famous. We're all coming closer, not closer yet, but we're getting close enough to Shabbos b'shalach, right? And we all know the custom that we've put out bread on Shabbos b'shalach for the birds. It's a custom that's a holy custom brought down by the Maral of Prague. And the question people say, and the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings it up, if you're allowed to do it, because you're not allowed to feed animals that are not your responsibility on Shabbos. But a pet, you have to feed it. What's a pet supposed to do? Starve on Shabbos? You don't starve on Shabbos. Why should it starve on Shabbos? You're not allowed to provide it for food in ways that's prohibited. For instance, we're going to learn the laws of what foods you can and cannot provide in what way. But to starve an animal on Shabbos, God forbid, you're not allowed to starve an animal on Shabbos. Now, if to go out and feed an animal that's not your obligation, could you put out food for the cats on Shabbos? That's another question. And the Shulchan Aruch discusses it and actually gives a special allowance for dogs, because the dogs are so desperate for food. It's so hard for them to find food that Hashem is compassionate for the dogs and allows even stray dogs to be fed on Shabbos, according to the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and possibly that could apply to stray cats today as well. But like the question is, if you could put out birds don't need our help for finding food. So to put out food for food for the birds that are not your birds, just the pigeons, that's another question where there comes up with the conflict about putting out food on Shabbos Shira.
I might have been thinking about Pesach because a lot of dog food is chametz. Maybe that's what I was thinking
So
of.
then you have to figure it out. You can't starve your dog for 8 days. It's usher. Tzar Chaim. How is the dog supposed to live for 8 days without food? Maybe they have kosher Pesach food. I'm sure that to have chametz in the house, you're not allowed to. So you have to find kosher
Right.
Pesach food. I'm sure they have
Yeah.
kosher Pesach animal food, but
Right.
you can't starve your animal for 8 days. Okay, let's just do one more law. If someone has a non-Jewish servant that rides an animal on Shabbos, is it your obligation? And if it goes out so here it says it's separated, that when he leads it to the water, if you have a non-Jewish servant who rides on an animal on Shabbos, when it leads it to the water, okay. Here it says it in two statements. When it goes to take it to drink. It's not your job to tell the servant not to ride it on Shabbos. To ride on Shabbos is not a problem for the animal. The animal doesn't mind you. It's not considered that the animal is doing work by carrying a person. The law on Shabbos is that a person, a live person, carries himself or herself. So therefore, and the rabbi said you shouldn't carry live people on Shabbos. And therefore the rabbis didn't say that the animal can't carry live people. So that's not why we don't ride animals on Shabbos. A Jewish person is not allowed to ride an animal on Shabbos, and that applies even in an Erev. It's not about carrying outside. But this doesn't apply to any Yehudi less than but. There's no law. So the animal is not doing anything wrong by carrying the non-Jew, and the non-Jew doesn't have an obligation to keep Shabbos. So in that case, it's not your job to tell the non-Jew that he shouldn't ride the horse when he's taking to drink water. You have to lead it, but the non-Jew is allowed to carry. You don't have to tell him, but you don't have to prevent him either. Even if they were to add a saddle or a blanket, which then you could say the animal is carrying, but in this case, they're connected more to the person than to the animal, and therefore it's not considered carrying on the Shabbos. But to add extra things, then it's already the animal carrying, and your animal has to rest on Shabbos. And we're going to learn in next week about the laws of milking cows on Shabbos and the laws of lending your animal to a non-Jew on Shabbos to do work if you know they're going to do work. Because if you own the animal, could you have a non-Jew do work with the animal on Shabbos? Okay, let's just do the footnotes on this one. I believe we're footnote number 18, which is it's only a rabbinic prohibition to carry on Shabbos, i.e., for a person to carry a living creature. So to carry something alive on Shabbos for us is rabbinic because a chai noises atzmai, live people carry themselves. Obviously, you can't carry a non-live thing, but a live thing you're allowed. But rabbis prohibited it, but the rabbis didn't prohibit it when it comes to animals. So it's not included when it says your animal has to rest on Shabbos. To add a blanket or a saddle is okay, i.e., the saddle or the blanket will be nullified to the carrier. Footnote number 20. In other words, the animal is considered considered as carrying only the rider, because that's part. Just like you can't tell the non-Jew to take off his coat, right? Because if you're wearing a coat, then it's extra weight. That's part of the person is the clothing. So part of the person is the saddle. It's uncomfortable to sit on a horse without a saddle. However, it may not put anything else on the animal extra that's not part of the riding. So says the Shulchan Aruch 305:22. Any other questions before we finish today? Okay. Thank you all for joining. Next week, we're going to get into the questions about, which is a big question over here in Eretz Yisrael, when they have all the dairy farms that are owned, of course, by Jews, like Tenuva. That one of the things that when you go to the store in Eretz Yisrael and you want to have what's called Mahadran milk, what does Mahadran milk mean? When it says Mahadran means like the more stringent kosher. What does it mean? It doesn't just mean that it wasn't milked by non-Jews and it's Chol Yisrael. There's also questions because even the non-Mahadran milk is Chol Yisrael. The question is other questions. If the animal had antibiotics, certain things that can make the animal, it's called a chalif treifa. And then there's also, can you drink the milk? Can you buy the milk that's been milked on Shabbos? Is a person allowed to sell? You're allowed to milk on Shabbos because if you don't milk the animal on Shabbos, then the animal's in pain. It's engorged. But are you allowed to then make money on that because by selling it? So that's all the questions that are discussed the next week, and also the questions that Rebecca asked about how do we feed our animals. But we have a lot to check up on before we get to next week's class on the walking of dogs, the different clothing or things that a dog or a pet can wear, including those about Tzar Balachim, about the shocking things, etc. All right, everyone. Thank you for